Cosmo's been abstracted.
Abstracted? I guess. What does that mean exactly?
Oh my gosh, that sounds like too metaphysical a question. I don't even know how to answer that.
Well, I think I might. While I enjoy the indie animation on YouTube, I didn't think we'd get something with the philosophical depth of True Detective, nor the intricate thematic intertextual references of Westworld, in a small indie project done by young people on YouTube. But after watching a few analysis videos elsewhere, I realized there may be some real depth to this cartoon. I have to give MatBat credit for pointing out the subtle reference to the shining in a pattern on the floor texture as being the first thing that made me consider the possibility of deep symbolism and references in this show. That and a bit of a push from someone who watched the show with me. The first thing I thought of was that Kaufmo looked familiar. And he should. You've also probably seen Coco the Clown, but may not know he is famous for making an evolution in animation technique. Coco is the first rotoscoped character. For those unfamiliar, rotoscoping is a process whereby a filmed actor is traced frame by frame to assist an animator in making an animated character more lifelike. Rotoscoping in general, and Coco in particular, represented a departure from more abstract representations of humanoid forms and movement to more natural movements. Perhaps the most famous and successful early rotoscoped character that is still alive today in culture is Snow White. Pomni's color scheme and shoulder poofs reference Snow White's character design. She's kind of a mashup of references between Snow White and the Fool from The Fool's Journey of Tarot, being the primary audience stand-in and representing mostly the audience journey of knowledge through the show. Of course, this is immediately suggestive of some plot prediction. As many have theorized, the quote-unquote human characters of Digital Circus are more likely copies of humans that may still exist separately outside of the Digital Circus simulation. Going further with this rotoscoping analogy, it may be that humans have been chosen to be in the simulation to make the characters more lifelike. However, after realizing this about Kaufmo, I was thinking of the characters of Digital Circus as representing fictional characters in general. And when I think of fictional characters or other mimetic objects being abstracted, I think of a very specific postmodern philosopher, one currently somewhat popular in internet culture, Baudrillard. You may be familiar with the popular Baudrillard memes where some object, sometimes a food like pumpkin, is shown represented in Baudrillard's 4 stages of the image. Here, a very common example is based around pumpkin spice lattes. In stage 1, we have a natural object that is useful to man. In stage 2, that object has been packaged and made palatable as a mass-produced product. In stage 3, a highly stylized form of the object becomes a status symbol.
Welcome to Pumpkin Spice Latte!
The peculiarities of this stylization twist the image away from its original natural purpose, stretching the connection to underlying reality to its limits. In stage 4, the peculiarities of this highly stylized form of the original natural object become commodified and lose even their significance as signifiers of status. Artificial food flavors are such a common example of Baudrillard's stages that this line from the show is basically a direct reference to these examples.
Digital food here only gives off the virtual sensation of eating, without any of the nutritional benefits.
Baudrillard is trying to capture that feeling that you have that everything in your life is a copy of a copy,
Copy of a copy of a copy.
how modernity, through its reproduction, erases the meaning of symbols. Another example of this degeneration of symbols may be the clown itself, or at least as popularly imagined. No one sees a clown and finds them funny in and of themselves, and very few people in contemporary society would find a clown show genuinely funny. We imagine that at some point a clown's costume was genuinely funny in and of itself, possibly to some imagined, less sophisticated audience of the past. But now the clown isn't really funny anymore. It's just a cultural object, a clown, and nothing more. Ronald McDonald and Pennywise are completely alienated from the clown's origin as a comedy performer for adults. Clowns as a concept have lost inherent meaning.
And eventually you get to asking what the point of anything is, and you completely lose sight of who you are and why you're even alive, and when you reach your breaking point, something really terrible can happen.
Clowns have been abstracted.
Whoa, Cosmo! Listen, I know we didn't always get along, like when you called me out for fake laughing at your jokes. I swear I really did think they were funny. I was just having a bit of a bad day!
Did you notice we have an example of a joke by Kaufmo? In the scrawlings on the walls of his room, we see repeated the word exit mostly. But if you pause it and look, you may notice the joke setup, what did the exit say to the clown? While at first this may seem like an uncompleted half-joke, you may have just put together that exit is the punchline for the setup, what did the exit say to the clown? This is another clever reference to Baudrillard and the destruction of meaning. The exit doors of Digital Circus are labeled exit, and in this sense they are saying exit to anyone that can see them. But the meaning of this word, exit, seems to have shifted. It is no longer attached to the meaning it formerly held in the real world. The exit door is just an exit door, not a way out. Very Baudrillardian. While simply being a simulation is enough to evoke references to Baudrillard, like the Matrix film's inclusion of a shot of Baudrillard's famous book, Simulacra and Simulation, there is a passage in Baudrillard's The Vital Illusion which explicitly references the possible elimination of traditional death through technology in the far future, rendering a simulated death-like experience, which is devoid of the connection to destruction of life, as a desirable luxury, similar to how pornography provides a sex-like simulation devoid of the connection to the creation of life. Kane actually mentions death as one of the Digital Circus's activities.
Do you like adventure, activity, wonder, danger, horror, pain, suffering, pain, death, disease, death, angel food cake?
Baudrillard specifically hypothesizes that humans in this far future will have lost purpose and will be potentially retained as objects of entertainment or art, literally calling them attractions, using that exact word. Attractions, as in the objects in a theme park or circus. I think each of the quote-unquote human characters represents a different take on these Baudrillardian themes. Perhaps most obvious is Kinger. The contrast between Kinger's lack of authority and his presentation as a monarch calls to mind the similar devolution of power from symbolic monarchs that we have left in the Western world, like King Charles. The queen we see in the tent hallway may be a reference to a previous monarch rather than Kinger's romantic partner, representing both a Baudrillardian view of the temporary and false nature of political authority, as well as potentially a cheeky reference to the recent passing of Queen Elizabeth. Gangle seems to be a representation of the social masks we wear and the way we simulate ourselves. Zubul is in many ways a deconstruction of the concept of a humanoid cartoon character. This deconstruction is similar to the way that Andy Kaufman deconstructed the concept of comedy, abstracting elements and experimenting with the form until it was barely recognizable as comedy. Of course, Andy Kaufman is another reference made by Kaufmo's name.
Saturday Night Live, it discovered me. I'd rather if you don't laugh, because I'm not trying to be funny right now.
Jax is full of contradicting signals. His level of ironic detachment and sarcasm raises all sorts of questions about the meanings of his words and actions. One of the first things he says is to encourage Pomni to continue to try to take off her headset, sarcastically stating that it worked for all the other characters.
Keep grabbing at it. That worked for all of us.
His character may be a statement on how facetious irony and sarcasm contribute to and result from the degeneration of symbols. Jax also seems to be the group's leader, despite appearing to possess none of the desirable qualities of a leader.
Kinda rude, Zubul. Now I don't want to help you.
He appears lazy, flippant, and selfishly cruel, where a good leader would be diligent, caring, and altruistic. Yet he is the one to suggest an adventure.
We having a new adventure today for the newbie, or what?
He divides the group, sending Pomni and Ragatha along with himself to check on Kaufmo.
You, me, and Pomni will go check on Kaufmo, which leaves Crybaby and Hoo-Ha together to go handle the Zubul situation.
And he seems to rescue Kinger and Gangle from abstracted Kaufmo. Consider also that choosing Pomni and Ragatha to accompany him when visiting Kaufmo may have been a choice to bring the more stable group members along to help pull Kaufmo back from what Jax knew was the brink of abstraction. So in addition to his words often having the opposite of their plain meaning, his actions as a potentially benevolent leader may be the opposite of his presentation as an irresponsible wise-ass. Ragatha seems to be a tragic representation of the symbolic degradation of man by man. Like a distant third-world victim of some far-off tragedy, she represents a human in many ways, but also a representation of a human that is allowed, through some reasoning, to be mistreated, specifically physically. Ragatha's asking Pomni for help only for Pomni to become distracted by the illusions of hyperreality may be intended to symbolize the distractions of wealthy Western audiences from the plight of others elsewhere in the world or within their own societies, literally existing within a maze of office cubicles, concerned about their own goals while others suffer. This is probably the most tragic and impactful application of a Baudrillardian view. Baudrillard is particularly concerned with the destruction of the teleologic meaning of societies, and asserts that both communism and liberal capitalism have lost teleological significance in the 20th century. That is to say, in Baudrillard's view, both communism and liberalism have this teleological purpose to work towards a utopia. During the 20th century, the utopian goal of communism, whereby a liberated labor class can live an idyllic life free from oppression, has been proven unreachable, and similarly for liberal capitalism, although this may be confusing as liberal capitalism doesn't seem to make utopian promises. Nevertheless, the lines in the intro song referencing the meaninglessness of the activities in Digital Circus seems to be a reference to this Baudrillardian concept of the lack of direction and meaning in modern society.
Day after day we fly past the moon and the sun, and we don't know why.
So to answer some direct questions about what this all means for abstraction in the show, Baudrillard views self-preserving survival as the most basic human purpose acknowledged in modernity, although I disagree with this and think it is even more basic than that and not peculiar to our era. Nevertheless, in the Baudrillardian view, extremely basic biological drives are seen as the purpose of humanity or the meaning of human actions in modernity. Abstraction would mean losing this meaning and purpose. So in the Digital Circus, where survival is not an issue, I think pain avoidance would be an appropriate analog to survival instinct. Abstraction is likely the end result of a bout of repeated and determined acts of what a non-abstracted character would view as self-harm. A character painfully self-glitching their immortal bodies repeatedly for as long as they are able to do so. And so, abstraction in the world of Digital Circus may mean losing the will to avoid pain, and to avoid the supposed negative consequences of things like disobedience, violence, and self-harm. After all, in a world devoid of permanent consequences like the Digital Circus, what significance does the sensation of pain hold? You can't permanently injure or kill yourself. So when the question of whether abstracting hurts or is painful is raised, we need to question what is meant by hurt or pain, as an abstracted character in Digital Circus no longer attributes the same meaning to those sensations that we would in the real world. So in one sense, yes, they experience the sensation of pain. But in another sense, this is not necessarily negative or otherwise meaningful in the way that a real person would assign meaning to experiencing pain, in a very similar way to the way exit has changed meaning within the Digital Circus. Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality describes all of modernity as artificiality. explicitly referring to it as a simulation in works like Simulacra and Simulation. That the fakeness is not limited to individual objects like pumpkin spice lattes and clowns. All of society, particularly all the bullshit jobs that do not seem to do anything productive, are part of a kind of simulation of past productive, meaningful activity. And due to this pervasiveness, hyperreality is inescapable. So when Pomni runs through the exit into a simulated office environment, the authors of the Digital Circus are talking about what they feel is the artificiality of workaday lives. That in Baudrillard and likely also Gooseworx' view, the hyperreality of Digital Circus is so inescapable, it already surrounds you. I hope I've said a few things you thought were interesting. If I did, please leave a like. I have a few more things to say about the Digital Circus that I couldn't fit into this video, so be sure to subscribe to catch the next one. This has been Shiva's Right Foot, and I'll talk to you next time.
I don't get all this eyeball stuff. What are they supposed to represent? Eyeballs?
It's POMO. Postmodern. Yeah, all right. Weird for the sake of weird.
Oh.